here. Thank you, Grandma, for this lovely sharing. And I want to just take a moment for ourselves, because what you'll be hearing today can be very graphic, as you heard from Grandma's sharing. You'll be seeing images that could stir up strong emotions. And for particularly, I want to just share this, that people in the room experience these things. And so we'll be pretty intimate with some of the slides. And so you'll see things that you may not have ever known or seen before. So take good care of yourself. I'm a counselor. If you need to talk afterward, let me know. And as always, we're here also to celebrate. So this is the dichotomy between talking about difficult subjects and still having joy and celebration. And I think that our families can be testament to that. If you've been through strong, intense times, and then you come out laughing and healing and crying together, that's the beauty of this human family. So let's take a moment right now to consider the people in your life who you've gone through trials with, maybe literal trials, separations, divorce, maybe violent conflict and war. Take a moment to consider those people in your life and just send a few heartfelt prayers to yourself and to those you love. Thank you. And the second task, the second request that I have is to take a look around the room. For those who are able, just take a look around and see who's here. Just take a look. Maybe you know someone, maybe you don't know someone, but just take a look around. Sometimes I like to do this practice when I'm in the airplane, because I think if I'm going to die tomorrow, these are the people I'm going to die with. And am I going to die in a good way, in a happy way, in a way where I feel love in my heart? And these are the people we're journeying with today. And these are the people we're going to go through stories, and everybody here brings a story. So let's start the slides, actually. I think the next one is of me and Grandma with our book. This is a book, this journey took about a couple years to make, and I was, as you'll see, I was researching it for about 45 years. I'll turn 45 this June. And these are stories that I inherited. They're stories that I heard growing up, and they're not just the stories, they're the meaning that I made through those stories. And as you see these films, see these images, hear these stories, you might be thinking of stories that you have from your family. Let's see the next. Yeah. I'm going to have to, I think this will be, oh, yeah. Okay. So bear that in mind. Oh, next, there we go. Next photo. There we go. I'll just give a little run through of what we're going to be sharing in this story here, in this particular story focused on the book. And so we're going to talk about my inspiration of why I started this project. And then we're going to go through his story of Indonesia, a little bit of Indonesia, and then a little bit more of Indonesia, and then Grandma's story that you might be familiar with if you read the book. So I went to Indonesia in 2010, and I was grateful to be there with my spiritual teacher, Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. I've been in the tradition, Plum Village, Buddhist teacher for about 25 years, Iris. And so this journey really brought me back home in many different ways. I was the first of a generation born and raised in the United States. I was born in Edmonds. To have gone back to Indonesia. And so this journey was important in this story that we're learning about today. Thich Nhat Hanh talked about, who knows about Thich Nhat Hanh? Okay, great. If you don't, check out his book, Touching Peace. That's the book that I started with. It's a mindfulness is all the rage these days. It helps you come back to yourself. So we talked in these talks about shared ancestors. Next slide. I need a clicker. And I was able to, because of Grandma's story, to visit the places that are mentioned in the book. So this place, as I mentioned before, Minahasa, means one people in the northeast of the Indonesian archipelago. This is where Grandma bases the story, in this little town called Kalaviran. And it is there that I realized that family is a spiritual ancestor. So what that means is that I do a lot of research about family, all sides of my family, in order to learn not only about myself, but in context of what happens in the world that. So I get to learn about many other cultures, many other people. Just as when we look around the room today, many walks of life, many tribes, many nations. And so we're building a collective narrative, and that's what's so important. Next slide. The ikat. The ikat is, this one in particular comes from Minahasa. It's a special dyed cloth that's woven together. So today, essentially, we're weaving an ikat together because our stories are emerging through this, and then we'll be in the fellowship hall eating food, and you know what happens when we eat food? We start talking, we start saying, oh my gosh, this reminds me of something, or oh my gosh, I've never tasted something like, oh my gosh, this is so it's so hot and spicy. So this motto of Indonesia, called Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, was the motto of Indonesia when they founded in 1945, post-World War II. It means unity and diversity, or together we are one. And I added Ikat. Together we are one Ikat. We're one family coming together, learning about ourselves and each other. Okay, moving on. Indonesia. You heard about Indonesia. Is that working? Yeah. So this slide tells about the Dutch influence in Indonesia. So European powers were floating around the world looking for stuff. And so we found this, the Dutch, I say we because I'm part Dutch. I'm part a lot of things, Italian, Swiss, Polish, Dutch, Austrian, German, Chinese, a little bit of Jewish. So the Dutch East Indies started around this time, and you can see how the development, when the corporation, the VOC, came from the Netherlands to go into this place called Indonesia. Indonesia's historical name is Nusantara, which means the islands between. So think of the Pacific and the Indian Oceans, right? You got it in your mind, Pacific, Indian Oceans. And the island archipelago of Nusantara is in between. So you got Asia, Southeast Asia, you got Australia, India's over here, Indian Ocean, Pacific. So in order to get from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean, you have to travel through Nusantara to Indonesia. So think about this when you're thinking about this story. We're talking about weaving things together, ikat, many stories, many flavors, many looks, many different ways of people interacting together, people and other beings, earth, elements, plants, so numerous. How many people have heard of the Treaty of Run? Or the Spice Islands? Spice Islands, okay. Run is the small little island where they discovered what spice? Discovered? Close? Nutmeg, okay. Nathaniel's Nutmeg is a great resource for you. There's also ones written by Minahasa and others. So the Treaty of Run. So the British and the Dutch were really heavy on nutmeg. They thought nutmeg was the greatest thing. You put it in everything, apple or pumpkin pumpkin spice, that's kind of nutmeggy type of thing. So the British and the Dutch are fighting over this little island run. But there was also somewhere else they were fighting for called New Amsterdam. Does anybody know the common name for New Amsterdam? Someone's got their hand up. New York City, Manhattan. Manhattan. So what happened in 1619, or 1667, sorry, Treaty of Run, they traded. They said, the Dutch said, no, we're going to keep the Spice Islands. So we traded Run for New Amsterdam, which became Manhattan. Think that was a great choice? You be the judge. Okay. This comes to Grandma's story, the opening of Grandma's story. This is my favorite part. And there's a little boat in the corner that I just discovered the actual boat that my maternal grandmother's father traveled from Indonesia, probably from Jakarta. He was born in this place called Minahasa. He wasn't Dutch citizen, he was Indonesian. He was Minahasa. Everybody following? Okay, we can have questions at the end. All right. So from Minahasa, goes to Jakarta, or what's called Batavia, boards the ship, goes to the Netherlands, and Netherlands goes into Boston Harbor. That was the first entry to the United States that we call him Opa, but my maternal grandmother's father landed April 2nd, 1926, on the SS Forestbank. Then from Boston, the ship, great-grandpa's still on board, goes to Brooklyn Harbor, and what does he do? They lay shore. They're in Brooklyn Harbor, which is probably around the Navy piers Navy yards for those who are familiar. And probably with another friend, I'm guessing, based on my research, he jumps ship. I mean, like, literally. Jumps into Brooklyn Harbor and swims to shore. Who does this? Her daddy did. Swims to shore, finds a job at a dye shop in New Jersey, near Elizabeth, New Jersey. Anybody familiar with Elizabeth? My mom's name, Elizabeth. So they go he finds a job. He's living with someone from the Philippines and someone from the Dutch East Indies. And I imagine he was walking down the street home from work one day, and my maternal grandma's mom, soon to be, was walking home from work too, because they lived kind of near each other, according to my research. So what happens? They saw each other and they fell in love. They had babies, including my grandma and her twin sister, born in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Mind you that this person, my great-grandfather, had jumped ship, no papers. He didn't go through anything. He was just like free. But he was a Christian. We're in a church, so I gotta play with this here. He was a Christian. He was a devout servant in the Salvation Army, same with my great-grandmother. So grandma's mom and dad were Christian people, and in 1939, next slide, he does what? He says, like, I can't live with this. I am illegal in the country, and he gives himself up. He goes to, next slide. Oh, yep, so we'll get there. Oh, take a drink. Something, next. Yeah. So he gives himself up, and they say, well, you're going to Ellis Island, because he's undocumented. He's not here legally. He didn't go through a legal process. The Salvation Army and a notable congressman from New Jersey at the time advocated in his behalf to stay in the country, But you have to think about these times. So we're in the late 20s, from the late 20s to the early 30s and late 30s. We have Asian Exclusion and Origin Acts, which forbid people to become citizens from Southeast Asia and even to enter the country. So what happens? They did everything they could to stay in the country, said he's a taxpayer, he's doing all these things, he's contributing to society, and the Immigration Natural Services says, nope, gotta go. So he pays for his trip back to Indonesia, and because the family does not want to be separated, my grandmother, her twin sister, and their mom go with him. And so grandma was born in Elizabeth, so she was birthright citizenship in the United States. Think of that for a minute. And these are the headlines. I want you to take a look at this and tell me what you see. What comes up? What's the headline? Start there. So these are the pictures, and it's syndicated across the country, the story of their deportation and great-grandpa's jump was all over in the newspapers. This is a picture of them. Deported with a smile. That was kind of the motto of our family. I want you to have that in your mind as we start to see more of the slides. So in Pier 3, they took off on April Fool's Day, April 1st, 1940. And it was a 2-3 month journey down the East Coast, through the Panama Canal to Hawaii, which was then a territory. And they landed first time in Indonesia, in Surabaya. So I thought, wow, we're going to have the Seattle-Surabaya sister cities here. That's where they first learned about Indonesia. These twins learned that they're going to have to eat white rice, because Indonesians eat rice with everything. And this is a picture of me and my spouse went to Pier 3. It's now a park. Brooklyn has made beautiful parkscapes and reforested this area. And Pier 3 was the last to be reforested and made into a park. So these next slides, I'm going to tell you about a date that's really important. January 11th, 1945. This is a picture of the archipelago in Indonesia. You see Java, Batavia is now Jakarta. And then you see Celebes, which is Sulawesi. On the tip of that is Manado. And you can't see it too great now, but there's a date there. And the date's really important. And this map tells an incredible story that leads me to ask why. January 11th is the first date on this map, in chronological, where the Japanese Navy landed in Indonesia, which was then the Dutch East Indies. And I asked myself, why Minahasa? Kenapa? Why? Why would they land in Minahasa? Yet to be, it's my next book. This map, Tasuka, is the bombing of Minahasa on January 11th, 1945. Incredible thing war is because it's very strategic. So they bombed the bridges, they bombed the seaport in one of the largest fresh lakes of Indonesia called Tondano, Lake Tondano, Danau Tondano. And so they bombed January 11th. These are, if you see in the chapter that I'm about to read, you'll hear Grandma's voice of what happened. And I'm going to pause here before we move to the next slide. And I'm going to read a little passage from the book. We heard the roar of airplane engines. We looked up at the sky and discovered the planes. There were so many of them. The sun's reflection made them shine like big bright stars between heaven and earth. Uncle couldn't take his eyes away from the sky. Look, look, he shouted. Do you see those little white mushrooms? This is Grandma talking. As a little kid, she was 8 years old. I looked closer and saw hundreds of them. What are they, Uncle? He looked at me. Don't you know? They are parachutes. At the end of the mushroom hangs a soldier, a Japanese soldier, and they are my enemies. This is Grandma talking. I didn't quite understand what he meant about enemy, but I didn't bother to ask for an explanation. The airplanes separated from each other, dropping troops along their way. The sky was full of them, including the sky above Uncle's farm. As soon as they reached the ground, Uncle gripped his gun tighter and ordered me to go into the shelter. I looked at him with wide eyes and gripped his arm. The next slide is a slide that I discovered in this last couple of years at this exact moment, in this exact place that Grandma describes in her book. This is her village that she's talking about. And think of yourself, why would this place, this incident, be documented? Kenapa? Why? It was Japan's first ever parachute landing, and they landed on top of my grandma's community. And you'll learn in the book about what happens next. I just want you to take a moment and breathe this in. Everybody in this room has been touched by war. Every single one of us. Every single one of us has an ancestor, a relative, a friend, even yourself who has witnessed things just like this. We hear it on the news. We hear it so much that we might be desensitized to it. And this place, this time, is really meaningful for me because it's the story of my family. It's the story of how I got here, deported with a smile, how we made it through these journeys that we experienced together. Among the beauty, Gunung Klabat. Klabat Mountain is the highest in Minahasa. So these are the places, these jungles are the places that my grandma and her immediate family escaped to. So the story is that they were deported from New Jersey. They sailed 2-3 months, and upon landing in Indonesia, in Manado, Japanese landed about a year and a half later. And it was an experience that no one in this area really had before, so they were leaning on each other in order to survive it. And one of the ways, in these beautiful ways that I come back to this, and I just like, this is my favorite part of the book actually, is when Grandma describes the peace that she experienced amidst war in the jungle. And I'm going to read a part of that. I searched for a spot to watch the sunrise, and I sat myself down on a big rock covered with green moss, away from the people. I wished I could have seen a glimpse of the kampungs, the villages we had left behind us. The tall coconut trunks and huge trees formed a thick wall between us. The nearest palm sprawled outwards, hanging over the wet soil covered with footprints, worm marks, and the whorled arabesques of moving mountain shells. Here and there, a thick litter of palm trash lay. As I looked up, a pair of delicate bluebirds were claiming their aerial surroundings. Then they swept out to meet me, lifted upwards in mock fright, swirled through the palm leaves and came down again, their wings silent as a butterfly. Amused, I looked at them, and for the first time in many months, I was happy and enjoyed being by myself. It seemed that I had escaped from man's world. I did not attempt to join the others and was not aware of the time. This brief moment was mine alone. I forgot that beyond the mountains, covered with coconut trees, thick jungle plants, and wild fruit, was someone waiting for me. I had discovered a new world, an innocent world, untouched by human hands. I love this. Isn't that beautiful? Think of that. Think of these moments, these places that you've been. Maybe in your front yard, you have a flower you really love and you've been waiting to blossom. The California poppies are out in our yard. It's beautiful. All around us, every moment, there are beautiful things happening. We got to learn to pivot our attention sometimes, to turn toward those things of beauty because they help us. Okay, so we're about wrapping up because I'm getting hungry. This is the story that we're start talking about the church. So my maternal grandma and grandpa met in this place called Minahasa. On the other side of Manado's here, on this tail of the archipelago, and Bitung is on the other side. So grandpa was hired by the Indonesian government to build the first harbor in Bitung. Does anybody know Bitung? Bitung? Bitung, yeah, June. Okay. So Bitung is like a really tourist hub now. The government's trying to build all the cruise ship lines and things. Grandpa built the first harbor there. And situated between the harbor is Grandma working in the architectural place where she had to deliver papers to, she can tell you this story. She delivered papers to Grandpa and they met. I'm gonna out you, Grandma, a little. And she said, I'm not gonna marry this guy. Someone said like, oh, you should marry Ati, my grandpa. And said, I'm not gonna marry this guy. He's an arrogant Dutch guy and he thinks he's all shit and stuff. Oh, I said that in church, sorry. But they did. And that's their wedding to prove it. And some of the characters in the book are in that photo. And that's a picture of them getting married in Manado, the capital city of Minahasa. That's where they met. And there's another architectural feat. I married an architect, by the way. And I often say, I married an architect because I needed structure in my life. But I also get design help, and he helped design my cattywampus little life. Next slide. There's a bridge. Anybody recognize this bridge? Snohomish County, in a little town on Highway 2. Anybody guess? You get a coffee if you guess. Oh, no, you can't say. That's my mom. Copico, huh? Okay. Sultan, anybody know Sultan? Oh, wait, you said Sultan? I'm not going to give you Copico. You have this. Do you want it? Yeah. Yeah. It's among tamis, yeah. Sultan, Fifth Street Bridge. Is that right? Yeah, Fifth Street Bridge over the Skykomish. And I went over to the visitor center a couple weeks ago and asked, where is this picture? And she pointed out, oh, that's probably such and such bridge. You can see the railroad crossing and you can see the commercial buildings and then you see the mountain in the background. This is the bridge that Grandpa built, my maternal grandfather, Grandma's husband. And it's the bridge that enabled us to come here to Snohomish. Because without a job, you're not going to end up in the country. So he solicited for a job in the newspaper and found a one working at the bridge because he had built the harbor in Bitung. And so this is a picture of, are the Curtises here? No. Oh, there you are, Kathy, right? Oh, Kathy Curtis. So the famous family in the United Methodist Church in Snohomish, the Curtises, Shirley and Alan Curtis, which is your grandparents? Mom. Your okay. Okay, this is how we do it. We just like, So the Curtises were instrumental in getting us job, getting us a place to live, as was many people in the Snohomish United Methodist Church. I think it was called the First Methodist Church at that time, at a different location downtown, which you can still see. And that's where my mom and dad got married, in the church. And supposedly mom was baptized in the church, but she hasn't been coming to church recently. But maybe Pastor Drew can get you to come back. All right. And here's the picture of the church. There's the picture of them on the train coming in. Grandma likes to say that because Snohomish isn't a legit stop, they didn't even stop the train. They just slowed down and they had to jump off with their luggages. I like that story. I've experienced that a couple times. And this is the lovely family that migrated in 1961. So what happened, it was actually a second deportation because after the war, 1945, Indonesia had an uprising and called WWII, which was a violent uprising to take control of their nation and build a nation that we now call Indonesia. And so following that, there was a lot of talk about who gets to stay in the country and who doesn't. And because of the Dutch colonization, Indonesia gave the Dutch citizens, so if you had Dutch heritage, like my maternal grandfather did, he was born Dutch, never went to the Netherlands, was born in Bandung, in the mountain town. He was Dutch, Chinese, Indonesian. But he had the papers and said, I'm not going to give up my Dutch citizenship. And so they asked him to leave. And that was when Grandma and Grandpa, they had 3 kids, including my mom, her younger sister, and her brother. And they could have stayed and repatriated as Indonesian, but they would have to forfeit their Dutch citizenship. So they left to the Netherlands. Grandpa said, it's too cold here, I don't like it. And so they migrated back with Grandma's help because she was a birthright citizenship. And so they regained entry in 1961, traveled by plane. These people, I think of this journey. So think back when we're talking about Grandma's journey. There were all these boat rides. So Grandma's father comes on a boat through the Netherlands to Brooklyn, gets deported, so they go on a boat, go all the way around to Surabaya and Manado, and then they get deported a second time, go through the Red Sea, Suez Canal, all the way up to the Netherlands, take a flight back to Brooklyn, take a train ride across the United States. This is an incredible journey. And many of us have incredible journeys like that. Everywhere that I have talked on this story, everybody has an incredible journey. And I want us to think about those journeys, to write them down, especially if you've got elderly folks or people who are leaving the planet. You got to write these stories down because it takes all of us to make an ikat. It takes all of us to weave a beautiful cloth that will last for generations and that has every one of our stories in it, because every one of our stories is necessary to make that ikat. Because without it, we just have a blank page. There's nothing wrong with a blank page. There's a lot of opportunity in that, but there's also a lot in our stories that are important to share. That's the meaning of my journey. That's the meaning of what I found in writing this book, in conceptualizing this Blue Skies, Troubled Waters, and the title. I took this to an Indonesian market called Maya's in Linwood off of, I forgot the street. Anyway, Maya's, look up Maya's Market, right? I take it in and I have this book and I'm kind of trying to practice my Bahasa Indonesian language. And then they see it right away and say, oh, Minahasa, I'm from Minahasa. A connection. Then they open it up. They see the dedication page. Esa Mokan. I know that song, I can sing it for you. And so I'm here, I didn't think I would be singing in a grocery store, But I did, with other people who knew, who could relate, and they shared our stories, and it just makes a wonderful world. Next slide. So we're going to share more of these slides that are playing. Thankful and grateful for Pastor Drew, who has them up playing. They're of more of the family, and as we migrated. This is a picture of Oma and Opa. This is my maternal grandmother's mom and dad after they immigrated back to the United States. So they eventually made it back to the United States not long after Grandma did. Came to this church and gave a talk. Everybody came to this church, not this one, the old one, and gave a talk to share how grateful and thankful we are for everybody in this congregation, everybody in this community who supported us in our journey. This is my sister and I on their laps, and I just love that. It kind of parallels the story of the twins, my grandmother and her sister, and they actually are in the same position doing the same things. So this is in 1981. I'm going to close, and then I'm just going to open up for some quick questions. But I wanted to close with a song, and we'll have and the dedication. So we're actually going to close with the beginning of the book. Dedicated to the ones who fought for our freedom, to the ones who died for our freedom, and also to the ones who waited for those that never returned. And this is Isa Mocha, and I'll sing it twice. If you know the song, please sing along, but I'm going to sing it in my style, so hold on. And this is the translation. There's one thing of which I will remind you. Do not think of anything else. Remember what WWII, the creator, said. May we be given a long and healthy life. Isa mo kang ganang kuyaniko, de amo marua, ruagen ang ikarya, mongolei ngale uman, wiasio powailan, pakatuan pakalaviran kita nuaya. Isa mo kang ganang kuyaniko, te amo marua, ruagen ang ikarya, mongolei ngale uman, wiasio powailan, pakatuan pakalaviran kita nuaya. Pakatuan pakalaviran kita nuaya. Any questions? I can't promise an answer, but any thoughts that you want to share? We have a mic if you want to be on the mic. If there's a clarity that you need, Grandma's here. I think she'll be signing books and talking, and you can also ask us after there. We're going to have some festive stuff happening in the back room in the fellowship hall. We're going to have some dancing from Manado, Dari Manado, and some food called bubur Manado, and pisang goreng, which is also featured in the book. And in Manado style, you eat it with cabai. So pedas, panas, so it's going to be spicy, y'all. But any thoughts, questions anyone wants to share in the big group? You're too nervous, or yeah?
I just want to say thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Anyone else? No, you're all shy. You're in church. You're behaving. Don't behave. Go to the fellowship hall and let loose. So we're going to be singing and dancing. Oh, yeah.
I'm just curious, when was the last time you were in Indonesia?
Yeah, 2010. And so I hope to be back again. We have cousins and friends there who are there and who go back often. But 2010.
Was there some sort of ministry aspect
That's that's a great question. Yes, I went with my spiritual teacher Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, and I was able to teach among him to share about our teaching. And for those of you who don't know, Indonesia has a Buddhist history. So one of the largest Buddhist monuments in the world is in Indonesia called Borobudur. And so it was considered the third blossoming of Indonesian Buddhism when our delegation of 50 people were in the country. So we were rock stars. And we traveled to Borobudur together and walking, and I was privileged to give a talk to 900 people who were there at the retreat. And then we gave a public peace walk and then a public talk. After our visit, the mountain blew up. So happy to see us. It blew up and covered our tracks literally with ash. And then following that, then President Obama visited because he was the first sitting president to have ties with Indonesia and to actually live in Indonesia and to visit Indonesia. So it was a very historic time, and I was privileged to be a part of that. Following the pilgrimage with the spiritual community, I went for 5 days to Minahasa and traveled every place that I could within the book. And everywhere I went, it was a healing experience. I cried the whole month that I was in Indonesia because it felt like home. I couldn't describe it. I didn't, it just, the smell, the feeling, the food, it was amazing. And it was a healing journey because I knew what it took to get to Indonesia, to get from Indonesia with my family's story. So, but it was because of this book that I was able to have that experience.
Where are you based now?
Oh, I'm in Seattle. I have a private counseling practice. And my spouse and I live in the Wallingford near Green Lake. So you can come visit.
I noticed online that you're going to be speaking in Philadelphia, but I didn't see any other places. I was wondering, is there a special reason for being in Philadelphia?
Yes, I'm in my dad's side of the family migrated during the Revolutionary War times with Great Britain in Philadelphia through the Kimmels are through Pennsylvania. That's not why I'm going this time, but there's a association, a library, American Library Association is having a conference. So we're presenting at the conference, and then the Indonesian community, which is a pretty strong Indonesian community. They have a whole resource page and a community center, Gapura. So we're presenting with them, and then giving a talk at another Indonesian market near Elizabeth, New Jersey called Ditas. You can go on my, yeah.
This might be covered in the book, but how long between when your grandmother was deported with a smile back to Indonesia and then the Japanese, I know they came in 1945, but how long was that time where they got to like kind of acculturate back to Indonesia? Because I'm thinking like her mother didn't have any experience living in Indonesia, so
Yeah.
How long did she have to even adjust to that before the Japanese came?
It was about a year and a half, and they fully learned the language, and you'll learn in the book, they fully learned the language because they had to hide the fact that they were American, even though the Japanese knew, but they wanted to hide that fact. So they learned the language, including the local dialects. Any others? We can talk. Okay. So you can go to my website, briankimmel.com, BRIANKIMMEL.com, for all information about the book. There was a story about the Ebbings were the first Dutch Indonesian family to migrate here through Snohomish, and they have a painting from their friend, but also a dress that was made. I don't know if Grandma made it or the Ebbings, Rose Ebbing made it. But this is a dress that was made by members of the Dutch Indonesian community. Oh. So you can see all those, you can see the photos of the family, eat some food, take a postcard, and this is what I want to ask everyone to do. Take this postcard, go to your local bookstore, go to your library and say, I want you to carry this book. That's how we sell books. I'm like a traveling book salesman now. That's kind of my job. Thank you everyone for coming here. Thank you for the Curtises for helping to sponsor our family and Petersons. Thank you for Pastor Drew, for Snohomish Methodist Church, for just being yourselves and being out there in the world. It really means a lot to us. Thank you to my friends, my family. And are you ready to dance? I'm looking at the dancers. Okay, they're all decked out. Oh yeah, they're ready. Okay. Thank you.